What's going on, YouTube? Welcome back to the XForceGlobal channel. Thank you very much for joining me here today. Today, we're going to be talking about Bitcoin's price action and see if there has been any changes from our last video. For now, nothing has changed. We are still currently ranging on the micro time frames, but right now we have narrowed it down to the two scenarios that we discussed, which is the simple 5-wave impulse that we're looking for of the sub-mini degree in the green, and we may be working for the final breakout of this primary degree wave 3, 4, 5 to the upside to complete that wave 3. That should be working for a wave 3 to the upside, and again wave 4 ranging, and then a 5 to the upside. That should be completing what could be the end of the bull market. So that is the first scenario, and then we also discussed the idea of a possible triangle idea, which is going to be extending this whole range where the wave 4 wasn't terminated at this level over here, and we may be working in a corrective 3-3-3-3 range, which is the triangle scenario here. And this idea also does have its faults, and I think right now what we need to do as an Elliottian, and also looking at it from the general market perspective, is how to organize these scenarios as best as we can. So with that being said, I also have created a new scenario that we're going to be discussing. And that also, I believe, can also help mitigate what could be removing a lot of the market inefficiencies that we're seeing here for this current range. And I think both scenarios right now for this triangle idea and also this wave 5 to the upside as a simple impulse to the upside, both have their merits, but we do have one possible bearish scenario where we may be retesting around the sub 80K, possibly upper 70K regions before we actually move up. That could help create one more larger termination point for this wave 4. But for now, let's start off with our first scenario, which is still the primary idea. I still think that this idea is the best way to resolve this overall range, meaning that we do have this wave 4 termination point and we do have clear invalidation levels. And right now, there is that pros and cons to each scenario, but right now this is pretty much, you know, a double-edged sword. You're battling between two poisons right now, essentially. So if that's the case, we have to work with a series of 1-2s here. And now there are going to be some people who've also discussed on my social media, like, is there an issue or a timing issue between the parent degree and the lower degree wave 1-2s? This doesn't fit into that narrative of a possible 1-2-1-2 idea. But right now, it is really the only way we can be seeing it for how this current range could be resolved. Now, it's not the best one. Of course, the triangle is not the best one either, but it really is just a hybrid scenario when you're working with this idea, because this 1-2 is alternatively seen as a possible ABC that's part of a triangle idea. So in order to resolve this scenario, this would be the best way to resolve it. Of course, it's a bit ambitious. So what we need to be doing is we definitely need to be staying above the 93K levels, most definitely above the 91K levels, and then the major invalidation level at that point is most likely going to be breached if we do break this critical level here. But for now, what we are doing at this current time of recording is that we are still staying above some critical levels. So that means that we have to stick to this overall bias that we may be working in a series of 1-2s before we move to the upside. Now, what I like about this idea is due to the fact that we've also seen this during the expansion phase of this range here, of the overall fifth wave that we're looking for, of the mini degree. A lot of people were skeptical of having these series of 1-2s, but look what we got. We got the expansion phase already to happen. So are these series of 3-4s now also possibly in play? That's why I'm still sticking to the idea that we could also be creating a shorter or micro time frame series of 1-2s as well. Now, the timing issue, I think is kind of grossly over-exaggerated in this current time. I think a lot of people are just finding ways to fit in a certain bias, but I think just keeping it simple, seeing what the actual probable scenarios are on the table, this idea just still sticks to me, just due to the fact that we haven't created a higher high for a wave 1. And I've discussed this issue where, as you can see here, where we had this wave 1-2 of the parent degree, we breached the overall high here, and we still created a 1-2 that, you know, kind of helped mitigated the timing issue over here. And same thing with here on the primary degree of this range here. But as you can see here, we created a higher degree of wave 1-2, and then this wave 1-2 didn't breach the high of this wave 1. So I don't think that timing issue is too much of an issue here. The issue is where it lies is going to be where you create a 1-2 here, and then you create a possible 1 above that previous termination point of wave the 1. Then if you had this kind of structure where you had this wave 1-2, a 1-2, this would be, in my opinion, as a problem, but we don't have that issue right now. I'd still like to think that just because we haven't created a new high above this previous termination point, we can accept some market inefficiencies in part due to the actual timing chain issue for these 1-2s. But again, we are still at a very serious, critical, pivotal point for these series of 1-2s. That is, the termination points and the origins being breached. That's where the issue comes in, as we don't have much room for these wave 2s to be validated. So right now, this 1-2, 1-2 idea just still sticks to me. I think that this is the best way to resolve it. But as with the crypto markets, nothing is set in stone, so we have to also stick to the idea that the triangle idea may also be in play. So what about this idea? Now, are there issues with this idea? In my opinion, I think that there is a far bigger issue here that a lot of people are not taking into consideration. I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy when it comes to organizing the scenarios. A lot of people said that 1-2, 1-2 idea had a problem here, but what about the macro? If you look here where this wave 3 and this wave 4 termination point is going to be at an assumed a later date, you have such a larger wave 4 against this wave 2 over here. So you see the problem here. Not many people are discussing that. There is a big issue here. Not only that, you're also removing the idea of alternation, which is a different tertiary guideline that we also take into consideration when we're taking symmetry and geometry into place. That is also taken out of place. Not only that, we're also working with the possibility of a running triangle, which is a very rare pattern in itself on the macro. Then there's also the possibility that this is not even a triangle because we only have 3 subpoints. Usually you want to have at least the subwave D in place with a rejection, and you needed another 3-wave corrective move to fulfill that wave E. And then in hindsight, maybe a triangle will be the actual scenario in itself. So both of these ideas in terms of real-time analysis doesn't portray the best possibility or probability, that is, especially when it comes down to this scenario for a triangle, right? So if you're actually connecting the dots, for example, if we're taking the pinpoints and the termination points of these subwaves for this triangle, as you can see, if we take it from this and all the subwave internal counts as taken as these ABCs, you can see there is arguably a worse looking triangle that doesn't really portray the best look as opposed to having that wave 1-2, for example. If you have this looking triangle here, it doesn't really have the best look for a triangle, right? But when you're taking into consideration for the 1-2, 1-2 idea, as you can see here, this still does portray a possible better looking structure as opposed to having a possible triangle as the overall scenario. And you also have to take into consideration what I just said about the macro wave 3-4 being a problem here, as time is also an issue here. And I think the best time to apply time issues is when you have not only alternation in mind, but also the larger 3-4s and the larger 1-2 of the highest degree. That's when timing becomes an issue more than anything else, as opposed to building a series of 1-2s. So that's the first idea, in my opinion. I think this idea, the triangle idea, is downgraded in my opinion, and that leads me on to the third scenario where we can actually help mitigate a lot of the issues that we take into consideration for this range. Maybe this is a different entire corrective range where we are able to kind of shift this wave 3 over here as the possible top, and it makes sense. Wave 3s are usually going to be the overall top here, right? So if that's the case, all we have to do is now shift everything in terms of the internal action area waves. Now this move here as an ABC here that was originally part of the triangle could be leading us into a possible wave W. And now that we are also from a market psychology standpoint ranging, this could also be the triangle in itself for a wave X. So many people are not possibly seeing this as a wave X in play, where we may now be working for one more resolve to the downside, where if we're connecting the Fibonacci extension targets, that we can actually get supported around the 88 $87,000 regions all the way down to the $80,000 regions, possibly extending possibly a little bit further for a little bit more liquidity grab. That also lines with the $77,000 CME gap, which is a lot of people looking at as well. So why do we also like this idea in the sense that even though this wave 4 may be a little bit larger in time, well, we have already kind of helped mitigate that time issue a little bit by shifting that wave 3 to this point over here. And we're also now utilizing these corrective ranges a little bit better. Instead of seeing this as an overall range, instead of seeing this as a series of 1-2s, this idea can also help be fitted, and you're now sacrificing only one issue, which is the timing issue, but it is still taken into consideration for how this wave 4 could be playing out a little bit longer. So with that being said, these internal counts of this move here, we are just seeing this move here as the completed 5-wave extension to the upside for this primary wave 3. So what does that mean? We also help mitigate our tertiary guideline of alternation. We also may have a sharp play coming into play here against this sideways 1-2. So we also take that into consideration. So this idea of a possible range being created here for wave X could also be in play. So what does that mean? That also, in my opinion, if we're taking into consideration for a larger wave 4, this can now also become possibly the second main alternative idea. So that is possibly the best way to organize this. It's a if and that scenario at this point. It's either to the upside or to the downside at this point. For now, I like to see this as a possible move to the upside, and I believe that the only way to resolve this range is to move impulsively to the upside. Or if we're going to move to the downside, I think that this would be the best possible approach, that we are resolving to the downside and then we move to the upside. That is how we're kind of organizing the scenario. So that's where the conviction now comes into play, where all the talent is going to be lying on the Elliottian or looking at the current markets. Are you seeing a little bit lower downside, or are you seeing higher upside right now? But for now, since we don't have any major levels breached or invalidated right now at this current time of recording, it can definitely change throughout the week, that this idea just fits a little bit better. Resolve this entire range just by a simple impulse, and then resolve this entire range here, breaking these lows here, finally creating a new price extreme for this wave 4 as the possible range for this wave 4, and then we move to the upside. So there's two ways to resolve this range entirely. And then for this triangle idea, I just think that this idea is a little bit lower in scenario, because once we do start breaching this level, you can see the termination point. Not only that, it starts to, make this triangle a little bit iffy in terms of where the termination points are and how these trend lines are connecting. You can see that we're already so close to the invalidation level of the C wave anyways, that we're going to be breaching through a lot of broken candles, right? So that is how I'm seeing it. The best way to organize the scenarios, in my opinion, is just an if and that scenario. I think that we may be seeing higher levels just until we actually break these critical levels. I still think that we're going to be working for higher levels to the upside. But again, the second idea would be just working for a little bit lower levels of a possible $83,000 to the $90,000 levels. That would be the best way to resolve this primary degree wave 4. Also take into consideration for extending the wave 4, just like we did for the triangle, and also help resolving the timing issue, and also making sure that we also fit in the idea of alternation in mind. So that's that. And then the triangle idea would now be my third scenario. But again, this can still shift back and forth between all the three different scenarios, as this is still a valid scenario. I'm not arguing against the people who are saying that timing is an issue here. It is an issue, and a lot of people who are saying that the 1-2-1-2 idea is an issue, I can easily say that you're not looking on the macro, that this wave 4 also does portray an issue in itself. So it does help mitigate the internal structures, though, that this is going to be labeled as an ABC or a WXY to the upside for this wave D if we get rejected at this next liquidity level. But again, there's a lot of assumptions to be made that isn't clear enough for us yet. But we are just looking for general upside. So if these two scenarios come into play, it's both to the upside anyways, right? We're just going to be taking it day by day and see what levels are going to be rejected or not. So that's how we're looking at it, ladies and gentlemen. The deeper wave 4 is possibly the second alternative idea now, where we just resolve this range entirely. And then we also have this 1212 simple impulse move to the outside where we resolve it. Liquidity is now set, and we're now looking up for the upside. We just need a little bit more liquidity to come into the markets right now. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. This X wave right here is most likely going to be resolved as a possible triangle. And again, this idea is already close to invalidation anyways as well. If we break up, you know for sure that this idea is going to be not in play. That would help us go back and see if the original idea of this wave 4 being complete over here is in play or not. I think this idea would easily be validated. So these two scenarios are the most easily validated scenarios. The triangle scenario is just a little bit hard to validate right now. I think a lot of people just like to look at this as an extended range. That's absolutely fine. But right now, conviction plays even a more critical role at this current time of the stage of the markets. So hopefully that was helpful, ladies and gentlemen. I'm still seeing further upside with this entire range resolved to the upside. If not, I'm just starting to see that this may be turning into a range in itself, and we may be resolving to the downside. That could help create a little bit of a better look for how this wave 4 could be extended. So thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Please make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, the Discord membership if you are interested in getting more in-depth ideas throughout the week. Please don't hesitate to join. The link is in the description below. Please inquire about that. We also do offer a Patreon membership where I offer 2 extra video updates a week. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.